Hey, welcome back. My name is August Gold, and I'm going to start by reading you a poem, I can't help myself, by my favorite poet, Mary Oliver, who you'll hear me talk about like endlessly. And here's why. Listen to this. It's called At Blackwater Pond. At Blackwater Pond, the tossed waves have settled after a night of rain. I dip my cupped hands. I drink a long time, and it tastes like stone, leaves, fire. It falls cold into my body, waking the bones, and I hear them deep inside of me whispering, "Oh, what is that beautiful thing that just happened?" Right? Oh, what is that beautiful thing that just happened? When my grandmother died, I did something 24 hours after I got the news. I didn't go down to her funeral because I knew it would be orchestrated and led by a rabbi who really didn't know her. So he would get all the biographical facts right, but it wouldn't have the fullness of being with her in the way that I wanted to be with her, because she was quite special in my life growing up. There was so much love there growing up. And so I sat down. I lit some candles. Of course, I lit some candles and I made the vibe just right, because you can't just, multitask your way into making a connection to the energetics of a woman whose body she just left, right? It had been 24 hours that she left her body, and I wanted to connect with the her who she was now. And who she was now, I wanted to ask her a question. And the question I asked when I set the stage and I quieted myself down and I lit some candles and I put on some music and I simply let myself enter deeply into the moment. The question that I wanted to ask her was, what do you know now? Now that you're out of your body, that you did not know even 24 hours ago? And this was the answer. And I wrote it down, and I'm going to read it to you exactly as she gave it to me. She said, "Here in the land of love, we speak the language of love, and we barter with the currency of love." Right? I'm going to say it again, because she's not talking about where she is now. She's talking about here. What does she know now that she didn't know then about being here, And she said, here in the land of love, speaking about earth, speaking about me, where I was, where she had been when she was in form, right? Here in the land of love, that's what she called earth, we speak the language of love. That's the language, she says, we speak and barter with the currency of love. Now, there's nothing that could relate this voice to the grandmother I knew, because the grandmother I knew in form, in her body, with her personality, would never have said this. But I could feel the energetics of my grandmother fill the room. Her presence was right there because I called it forth, right? I asked to be in touch with it, right? And when I called that energy forth, that was her energy, she answered with this information that came so clearly through me as words that I had to write it down. And what she was telling me was something, believe me, I didn't expect. You could have blown me over with a feather. She was calling this world a land of love, right? She's calling what we exchange with one another a language of love, and how we bartering with the currency of love. I'm telling you, man, I couldn't put it together at all with this world that I was living in. It was easy for me to say, well, that's the way it is now where she is in that angelic realm, of course. But she was saying where she is in that angelic realm is where we are in this realm, but we're not yet in touch with it. Now, why are we not in touch with it? Why is it that this is the way it is, but we can't feel it? I mean, it sounds like science fiction, right? It sounds like a dream. It sounds like what somebody would say heaven was like, but certainly not earth. And she was saying this is going on earth, but we are out of touch. We're out of touch with that vibration, which means we don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't hear it, we don't know it, we can't benefit from it. We're living in a world where we are, because we're out of touch with that, when something happens in our life, right? And something happens every day. Something happens every single day. Get up, go to your car to go to work, and 5 minutes later something has happened to impact you. Something happens. Something is always happening to change things, right? So, Pema Chodron has an illustration of what meeting the moment and letting the moment meet us, impact us, looks like. She says there's a man, and he's in a rowboat, and he's rowing his boat, having a nice leisurely Sunday ride, right, in his boat. And all of a sudden he sees another rowboat coming from the other side of the lake that he's on, and it makes him smile. Look, they're having a lovely time too out on the lake, and this makes him happy, right? All of a sudden he begins to notice that there's, I don't know, a little current in the lake, and the boat is kind of heading toward his boat. It looks, like it's heading toward his boat, and it makes him a little anxious, right? So he calls out nicely, politely, he calls out and he says, hey, wanting to get the attention of the other guy or the woman in the boat so that they recognize that he's there and they can adjust the way they're moving, right? And they don't bump into each other. Well, anyway, as the current picks up, the boat continues to move in his direction at such an alarming rate and speed, he's starting to freak out, and he's starting to get angry, and he's starting to get mad. And what's their problem? Can't they see that he's here in his boat? What are they doing coming towards him? So he gets angry, and he's not polite at all. He starts screaming. Now he's angry. What's their problem? Golly, wake up, be conscious, right? He's got a whole story around who the person is in the boat that's doing this ignorant thing that's going to hurt them both. He's going to be impacted by this unconscious person in the other boat. So he screams out, hey, louder, hey, I'm here, watch out. And the next thing you know, just as he feared would happen, the boat runs right into his boat. It impacts his boat just as he feared it would. It impacts the boat that he's in. And he is, by this point, oh my God, he is beside himself. You know what it is when we start getting angry and the momentum builds in us and we've got a story and it's not our fault and they're wrong, right? And we're right and we did everything right and we need to show them their wrongness and they need to admit to it and we need to give them forgiveness for it. It's all Megillah, right? It's all Bubba Misa, as my grandmother used to say. It's all Bubba Misa. In the meantime, he looks over the side of the boat to start giving a piece of mind to the other man in the boat. And he realizes the boat is empty. There's no one in the boat. There's no one in the boat. Right at about, 33, 34, 35 years old. I get these symptoms that are very alarming, right? You get these symptoms that they're symptoms. You can get a cold, you can get a flu, you can get a virus. We know what the symptoms are. So this was a time, there was no pandemic going on like there is now. And there are symptoms now that make us nervous. Well, this was symptoms having nothing to do with the virus, but they were symptoms that were alarming. They felt as alarming as the symptoms feel right now to everyone who is protecting themselves from getting this virus, right? And we're right. And we did everything right, and we need to show them their wrongness, and they need to admit to it, and we need to give them forgiveness for it. It's all Megillah, right? It's all Bubba Misa, as my grandmother used to say. It's all Bubba Misa. In the meantime, he looks over the side of the boat to start giving a piece of mind to the other man in the boat. So he screams out, hey, louder, hey, I'm here, watch out. And the next thing you know, just as he feared it would happen, the boat runs right into his boat. It impacts his boat just as he feared it would. Something was happening in my body that shouldn't have been happening. Clearly shouldn't have been happening. I was bleeding and it wasn't a good thing. I was bleeding. My body was experiencing bleeding and there was no reason for it that I could see. And if it was bleeding, we all know if you're bleeding from a place you shouldn't be bleeding, it is a red flag, right? There's no mistaking that moment. So I ended up in the doctor's office, and he told me what it is that I had. He explained it. He did whatever tests. I don't remember what it was, but he took some tests, and he found out, he said this to me. He said, well, what you have is called bleeding fibroids, right? Not just fibroids, not just two fibroids the size of grapefruits, right? Or maybe the size of fists in my uterus, not just the fibroids, but they're bleeding, right? It's not enough you have them, but they're bleeding. And he says the way in which we deal with this, and what I'm going to suggest to you, is you need to have a hysterectomy. That's how you're going to deal with it, and then you'll take care of it. You won't have any problem. Well, so I don't know. I was sitting, listening to him, and his solution sounded, I don't know, it sounded wrong to me. It didn't feel right to me. Now, everybody's got a guidance system, right? We think our guidance system is the voice in our head. That's not our guidance system. That's the voice in our head. That's the voice of our brain, right? That's the voice of the record, the Library of Congress of everything that's ever happened to us and everything that might ever happen to us. That's the voice in the head. It's the voice inside of our brain that keeps tabs on everything. So it's not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be, our head is supposed to be the part that helps us live our life. But we have lived our entire life through the voice in our head, so we don't even know there's another voice. That is a guidance system that tells us uniquely, personally, directly, whether what is happening in the moment feels good or it feels in your body, feels bad, right? Not right or wrong, good or bad, whether this moment and what you're hearing feels good in your body. It feels lifted, it feels open, or it feels dreadful, it feels bad, it feels tight and tense. When it feels good, you're feeling that you're breathing, right? When it feels bad, you're holding your breath. Right? You can tell. When it feels good, you're relaxed in the moment. You're flowing. You're open. You're accepting. You're agreeing, as Pema Chodron would say. You're agreeing with the moment, right? And when it feels bad, inside of your body, that is the language of your body telling you that there's something in this moment that's not quite right for you. And that's what happened to me in the moment. I'm sitting across from him and I can feel in my body that his solution to my problem, which was a problem, his solution is out of proportion for what it is that's going on. I don't know how to figure out what's going on. I'm not a surgeon, for heaven's sake, or a doctor, right? But I know that that solution is not the solution for what's going on inside of me. How do I know that? Because my body's guidance system, which is nothing more than your body letting you know how it feels, which of course requires us to be in touch with the moment, with our body, so that we can feel the guidance system and how it feels. We can't know how we feel, how our body is processing the moment and guiding us into the next moment. We can't know if we're not in our body to feel what we're feeling. So I go home, right? I go home and I am beside myself because this is alarming, and now this alarming thing has a medical name, right? And it's scary, and the medical solution is even scarier, and I'm too young to even be dealing with this. So your head begins. What's wrong with the moment? What's wrong here? That's what goes on as the voice of our head builds momentum in this fear, this energetic field of fear. And it begins with the what's wrong with this moment. What's wrong with this moment is I'm too young. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have this. My body shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. This is not good. This should be happening to somebody hateful in my life, not me. I'm a good person, right? A long laundry list of why this moment shouldn't be happening. And we all do this. We all meet the moments when life impacts us, when the boat impacts us. We all meet the moment in the same way. We're all surprised. We are all shocked. We're shocked and we're surprised and we're flabbergasted and we feel victimized and we feel that it's so unfair. And the next thing you know, we're kind of angry. And the next thing you know, we're wanting to know who to blame. And the next thing you know, we're blaming ourselves. And the next thing you know, we're feeling all this shame around having something wrong with us. And the next thing you know, it ends up being that what's wrong is me. I'm what's wrong. Oh my God, we take that train of thought that begins with fear. We step on that train of thought, and that train picks up speed, and that speed has such momentum that even if we want to get off that train, right, of fear, it has a momentum, a viral momentum of fear that we can't even get off the train once we get on it and sit there too long. That's why when we feel the fearful thoughts in our head beginning, we can stop them in the moment because we can feel that doesn't feel good. Fear doesn't feel good. Our body is letting us know this fear, while natural in certain moments when we are in danger, is a guidance system we need to heed and hear. If it is hailing golf balls, you want to get inside. But we use fear as a way of life, as a way of being, as a way of moving through our life, so that every time something happens that wasn't in our plan of what we think should be happening, our plan of how we think should be happening and unfolding in the day, we get, oh God, we get shocked. We get amazed. And we get upset, and we get irritated and irritable, and that whole set of frequencies that something is wrong in the moment sets us off down a path that is simply not helpful in the moment. It is simply not effective in the moment. In fact, it is the least effective way to meet the moment. I sat with my fear that night, and I'm telling you, I was in terror. We're in terror. So many of us are in terror right now about a virus that's come and impacted us. The boat has come and it has impacted us. And to add insult to injury, this is what Pema Chodron says. Oh my God, what a teacher. What a living, amazing, living Buddhist teacher we have the great honor of sharing the planet with. What a beautiful teacher. To add insult to injury when we are impacted by the boat, Pema Chodron says, well, you need to say this, she says. And what does she say you need to say? You need to say these words, 4 words. I agree. I agree. Right? That's a bit crazy. You mean when a boat impacts me and it's not my fault and I am the victim of something I can't control and something's happening to me and they're wrong and I'm right and they're wrong, right? That in that moment when something happens, we are to agree with it? That doesn't even make any kind of sense at all. Unless you look at the moment of impact differently. What if instead of asking what is wrong with this moment, right? From the center of gravity, which is neck up, right? This is what our brain does. This is how it keeps us safe. What is wrong in the moment? Let me fix it. What is wrong in the moment? Let me change it. What is wrong in the moment? Let me do something with it, figure it out, and make it right. That's how we enter the moment. What if we enter the moment from an entirely different place that we're standing? Instead of standing outside of the moment that impacted us and assuming that that impact was incorrect or wrong or bad or shouldn't have happened, what if we meet the moment of impact by agreeing with it, right? By saying yes to it instead of no, by opening ourselves to the possibility of what the moment is bringing us instead of arguing with the moment. Because here's what happens. When we argue with the moment, that shouldn't be happening, even though it is, I'm not dealing with what life has brought me in the moment. I'm not dealing with the fact that my body is experiencing fibroids, 2 of them, inside of my body, inside of my belly, and it's in such a state of distress that it's bleeding. I'm not looking at that because I'm not saying yes to the moment. I'm so afraid and so mad and so angry, I can't deal with the moment. I'm dealing with what happens when I get on a train of thought that leads me directly into the basement, and the next thing you know, all I'm thinking about is who to blame. Right? That's what the media have become carriers for, a frequency of who to blame. It's not helpful. When I'm busy blaming, I'm not busy entering the conversation with my body that obviously my body is having with me. We're not entering the conversation with life that obviously life is having with us, with every single human being in the species. Right? This is a moment where life is having a conversation with us, and hell, we want to enter this conversation, because when you enter the conversation, now you can find out what the hell is going on. Now you can know what to do. Now you can feel what you feel. Now you can be guided into the moment so that evolution, so that the universe, the creative energy of life, the creative force of life, the creator itself, by whatever name you want to call it, that this energetic presence that is the living presence of life, the universe itself, that the universe is evolving us, and we are being grown just as everything in creation is being grown. We're not outside of creation, we are part of creation. And as life grows and nurtures and supports all of creation, of course, it supports and nourishes and nurtures and guides and directs and holds and supports and comforts and loves and sustains us. Why in the world would we think that all of creation would not take care of the creation that we are? We get confused because when life comes to support us, to love us, to grow us, to evolve us, and a boat impacts us, we freak out because we don't understand that it's not life coming to hurt us or punish us or some kind of karma that we're carrying from whatever life we don't remember. It's none of that. It's the moment, it's evolution as the moment, it's God as the moment, it's life as the moment coming to you with a silver platter saying, babe, you need to grow right now in this particular area. And so this experience that I'm bringing you, life says, this is going to be the exact experience that you're going to need that's going to help you become more of who you don't even know yourself to be yet, right? It's going to show us the other part of our nature that is always connected to life. The energetic part of our nature that was my grandmother, that I was in contact with, that anybody can be in contact with. We don't have to be in form to communicate with one another. We are formless energy that is animating these beautiful forms that we are. Our human body and our personality. We're being animated by this other part of our nature. That night, I was on a train of fear so dark, so scary, so alone with it. And I thought somehow it was my fault and my body was bad. And then all of a sudden, I realized that that boat had impacted me. And that there was nobody in the boat except what I was going to put in the boat. Life impacted me. Life doesn't punish us. Life impacts us with its need to grow us, with its need to love us, with its need to help us open our hearts. Because when we open our hearts, then we move from living in a center of gravity that's living in our brain, in the small portion of our amygdala that's keeping us safe in the world, making us more afraid and making us perpetuate our fear into circumstances that have created a world that is downright scarier every single day. And we don't think we can do anything about the world. I didn't think I could do anything about these fibroids unless I picked a doctor who could help me. So I did something different. Instead of screaming into the other boat, I put a different story into the other boat. And I sat down with a piece of paper and a pen, handwriting, not my computer, not a keyboard, not a typewriter. I had my hands hold the pen on an old-fashioned sheet of paper, right? What a dinosaur I am. And in that old-fashioned way, I moved my hand across the page and I began to find myself writing a letter to these bleeding fibroids. I entered the conversation with my body. I entered the conversation with the fibroids. I entered the conversation with the moment. I entered the conversation with life. I entered the conversation with the universe that the universe was having with me. That's what our wisest, most effective step is. And when we can feel the moment, we can feel that that's where we're going to be led. We're going to be led in the direction of entering the moment, of saying, I agree. I agree. Michael Singer wrote a couple of books. First book was about the untethered soul. That's what it was called. New York Times bestseller list, and I'll tell you why. I think it was like in the first chapter, if not the first page. He said something that just struck a chord with every single human being on earth. He said, we have a voice in our head like a roommate. We have a roommate in our head. And it's driving us crazy, right? He pointed to a voice, the voice inside of our head that we've been following as the authority figure, that we've been thinking is us, right? Which is a momentum of thoughts, a train of thoughts that just over and over every day we keep entering the frequency and keep taking that train ride over and over, thinking we are dealing with the moment. Instead of filling the boat with a fearful story, we can also choose. That night, I also chose to enter the moment by putting a story into the boat that was different. Why? Because when you begin with blame, there's no end to the blame. When you begin with fear, there's no end to the fear. When you begin with panic, there's no end to the panic. When you begin with criticism, with judgment, with hatred, there is no end to those frequencies. Once you enter them, you enter those frequencies and head downward where they always lead, deeper into a fearful and dark and despairing lower level of energies, into a basement, sub-basement, and the sub-basement underneath them, and then you're in some kind of depression, and then you need medication, and then you're in despair, and then it seems like the only way out is just to kill the other person, or kill yourself, or kill someone, right? The pain is so great in the field of fear because we're putting a story into the boat that can't lead us anywhere but down. It will never lead us into being evolved, which is what life is doing here, talking to us in the first place. In the Talmud, there is this adorable phrase. Oh my God, you've got to picture it for yourself. They say that there is an angel, right? There's an angel over every blade of grass. There's an angel over every blade of grass whispering, grow, grow. Right? That's how meticulously and precisely and directly life is speaking to us. Life is communicating with us. And that night, as long as I was saying, no, I disagree, I couldn't let life come in. I couldn't let it move through me. I couldn't follow this flow that wanted to flow through me. Now, not that it's not flowing, but if I'm not connected to it, I can't feel the safety of it, the ease of it, the calmness of it, the serenity of it. I can't feel it. So it's as if it's not there. But that night something happened. Right? Michael Singer writes a second book, and that second book was all about one thing. The second book was about something completely different, right? It was about his experience with the frequency of surrender. His experience, he called it the surrender experience, and surrender is a frequency. He went into the frequency of surrender and decided that for every impact that life ever gave him, whatever boats hit him, he was going to surrender, right? He was going to do what Pema Chodron said, which is, I agree. That night when I picked up the pen and the paper, I was agreeing. I stopped saying no, and I started to say yes to the moment. We don't have to say yes to a whole destined planned for forever. We only have to surrender to the very moment that life is speaking to us right here and now, conversing with us. And how will we hear its voice? We will hear it when we simply come back to our bodies in the moment by sitting down. Last week I talked all about stopping. Listen to that talk. It's called Stop the World. I Want to Get Off. Right? I talked about stopping, so I'm not going to talk about that again. I'm going to talk about sitting down, picking up a pen, and putting a pen to paper so you can begin to connect with that deeper voice within you that we're out of practice dealing with. We're out of practice hearing. We're out of practice connecting to. You begin to practice connecting in a conversation that's always going on, but we can't hear it. It's always going on, but we can't feel it. And it's always going on, but we can't communicate with it, which means it can't help guide us because we're not turning our attention to it. We put a different story in the boat. I picked up a piece of paper and a pen, and from my heart, not my frightened head, from my heart, from my belly, from our core, breathing brings us down into our body so that from our body, from our core, we can feel ourselves here in the moment. We can feel ourselves here. We plant ourselves in the moment where the energy of the flow of life is. We put ourselves where it is so that we can get in harmony with the rhythm of life, of evolution that's happening right here. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. It's not a book you have to read or a book report you have to write. It's easier than that. You have to feel it, which means you get a little quiet, you slow down, you stop multitasking for a minute, and you slow down, you pick up a pen and you move at the pace of your pen. You move at the pace of your fearful human mind, and you're going to be racing into the next moment. There are 1,000 fears. But if you move at the pace of your pen, which moves at the pace of your heart, now you've slowed yourself down and you can feel into the moment. And I found myself writing a letter to my fibroids. I found myself writing a letter to them, right? That was such a surprise to me to write a letter to them. But hey, I needed to. They were talking to me. I needed to talk back to it. I'm afraid. That's what I said. I'm afraid. Go away is what I said. Why are you here? I don't like that you're here. I might have not liked it, but I stopped resisting it. We might not like being impacted, but it doesn't matter to the world of evolution whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter if the sunflower doesn't feel like turning its head to the sun just now, right? It doesn't matter to life, to the universe, when it is evolving us, whether we like it or not. It's just waiting for us to open. It's just waiting for us to turn to the light, what feels light, what feels lighter. It just is waiting for us to turn to something deeper than our fear about what's going on. And all of a sudden, it told me, it will tell you, it tells us, it helps us. It talks to us. We just have to refine our ability to begin to learn this other language. And I wrote to it. I wrote my heart out to it. I wrote like 3 pages to it about how I felt and how scared I was and how I wished it would go away. And I didn't understand it. And what did it mean, right? And then something even more exquisite happened. See, we don't expect words like exquisiteness and beauty and grace and joy and elevation and highness and ease and flow. We don't expect those words to be part of a conversation when we're hit by a boat. We don't use that vocabulary, but here's the deal. When we get inside the moment, those are the exact words. That's the exact frequency that is going on while we're freaking out. There is a whole other frequency in the moment of the moment that when we connect to it, we can feel. And it's exquisite, and I'll tell you how it was exquisite, because all of a sudden I turned the page over and my hand started to write a letter back to me from my fibroids. Right? And this isn't some special technique that only special people in the world can do. You're entering the conversation with yourself. You're going to do it this way by hand because it grounds you more than trying to figure out how to do it in your head. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Trying to live our life through our thinking brain, our human brain, will not allow us to transcend the commotion of the world that we have created, that we're right now being given a break from. We're being told to stop and sit down and come back to the moment. Why? Because something wonderful is here. I started to find myself writing a letter that was coming from my fibroids, but now I could hear them because I had a pen in my hand and I asked them to talk to me the way I asked my grandmother's energy to talk to me, the way anybody can ask energy to speak to it if we simply get quiet enough to learn its language. It's not a language of thinking, it's a language of feeling. And we've been away from our body so long, we think being in our body is something optional. It's not optional. This is where our guidance system is. Right? This is where our compass is. This is where our intuitive guidance is in each moment, knowing how to move to the right or to the left. We're going to feel it. And all of a sudden, I began to realize that there was a letter being written back to me because it said, "Dear," and it named my name, "Dear August. Please don't call us by our medical names." My hand wrote. We live here in the land of love, my grandmother said. Her soul said, we speak the language of love, we barter with the currency of love, but we don't know it because when we get impacted, we get confused and frightened. And we resist the moment instead of entering the moment. When we enter the moment, all the wisdom we need is going to be right there waiting for us. Do not call me. Do not call us. There were two of them. Do not call us by our medical names. Here in the land of love, we speak the language of love. We got to get back to that frequency. We barter with the currency of love. We got to get back to that frequency. We're living in a land of love. We got to get back to that frequency. It's not that it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist for me until I turn to it. It doesn't exist for us because we've gone so far away from it. We're not where it is. It is in the moment. My hand is writing and it says, don't call us by our medical names. Call us by our true name. Little pockets of hate. I gotta tell you, nothing could have surprised me more than hearing that inside of my body I was carrying 2 pockets of hate the size of fists of people that I had not forgiven. Thought I had not forgiven. Could have sworn I had not forgiven deep down inside of my body. And my body was saying to me clearly by bleeding, we can't handle this anymore. It's too much distress to carry these pockets of hate around for another 33 years. Right? Now that isn't as exquisite as this, as what Mary Oliver said. At Blackwater Pond, the tossed waters have settled after a night of rain. Right? I dip my hands, I dip my cupped hands, I drink a long time. She says it tastes like stone and leaves and fire. It falls cold into my body, waking the bones. And I hear them deep inside of me, right? The bones, she hears them. She hears them. She hears her body. She hears her body whispering, her bones in her body. Oh, what is that beautiful thing that just happened? I'm telling you, that's exactly how I felt when I heard that this was the true name. 2 pockets of hate that I was carrying inside of my body. Did it mean that it wasn't called its medical name? That's not what it meant. It meant that inside the content of the story of what was happening to me, the impact that was happening to me, there was a context, a greater story, a bigger story, a truer story, an evolutionary story, an arc of fruition, a life that I'm leading that has to do with life evolving me into the human being, the woman that I'm destined to being. And this is a moment in time where I'm impacted, because this impact is going to enable me to become more than I was before the impact. That great impact, this great impact we're dealing with, is not here to make us fear more greatly. We're already in fear. We have mass shootings now that are so commonplace. We have numbed ourselves completely to the outrageous absurdity of where the fear, the momentum of fear has taken us as a species. Half of us can't even talk to the other half of us anymore. And even crazier than that, we don't know anymore what we're reading and what we're hearing is true or it isn't. We're in a real pickle. The environment is in a pickle. Money has made people crazy. That has brought us to a real pickle of a situation where 1% of the people own almost all of the wealth. And we are so on the train of momentum of fear, we can't even stop to take a breath. We are in a state of stress and anxiety that all the medication in the world is not going to heal. And leaving this world, that's not going to heal it either. We are invited to meet the moment, this great new moment, differently. We're invited to meet it. We're invited to agree with it. Michael Singer writes a whole book about what happens when every time a boat hits him from the time he's 19 years old to now, how he dealt with everything in his life and how everything in his life that looked like it shouldn't be happening turned out to be the very thing he needed to grow him. It is the simplest, fastest read. When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron talks about entering the moment with agreement, or else we're going to end up in a pickle. A pickle we cannot heal from being in the consciousness in the state of fear that created these conditions, We can't. Take a breath into your body. We had a little disturbance here out on the street. We're in a new studio today. We're trying it out. It's smaller and more intimate, but we have people on the street. So we'll take a breath into our body and we'll bring our consciousness right back into this moment, right here, right back into the story. I'm going to read you verse 69 from the Tao Te Ching, the Taoist philosophy of life, right? Listen to this. I'm just going to read you a line or two. There is no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there's no room left for my treasure. I'm going to do it again, verse 69. There's no greater misfortune than feeling I have an enemy. For when I and enemy exist together, there's no room left for my treasure. Right? I had lost touch with my treasure at that young age. My body was in a conversation with me about getting back in alignment with living in this land of love and speaking this language of love and bartering with the currency of love, right? And seeing the moment as a beautiful thing that happens instead of something fearful and horrible and wrong and bad, something that shouldn't be happening. We got to knock that off. Because as long as we're standing in our boat yelling at the empty boat, filling the boat with all our negativity and all our complaining and blame and shame, oh man, nobody's going anywhere, least of all us. You could have blown me over with a feather, and I'm not kidding, because I had no idea I was carrying that level of non-forgiveness. I thought I was a forgiving person. I thought I had done my forgiveness work. I had spent a decade in Al-Anon, right? I'm a slow learner, but I wanted to learn everything that Al-Anon, the 12-step program of recovery, taught me. I needed to learn everything because I didn't know how to live in harmony with myself, and I didn't know who would teach me that. So I went into that program, of course, to fix the people I was with, only to find out that I came in to fix myself. And what did I need to fix? I didn't need to fix all the stories of my life. I needed to fix my alignment with myself. I needed to put my attention back on the moment with myself and be here in the moment. When I was there that night in front of this letter, I knew what I had to do. I knew my next moves. I could feel it. You can feel your next right moves. Life is always flowing, and you need to begin to simply learn the language of feeling it. Then you can tell what's true and what's false because you can feel it. We have a guidance system within us that's going to tell us what's true and what's false. I can't wait for us to clean up the problems of all the false, media and false this and false stories and false publicity. And oh my God, it might take forever. What I can do is learn a deeper language, and it turns out to be my original language, and it's the language my body already speaks. I just got to get back in touch with my body. And what did my fibroids invite me to do? They invited me to do some housekeeping. They invited me to turn within and begin to look at all the people I hadn't forgiven, all the times I thought that the impact of the boat was somebody's fault. Look what they did. They're wrong. Waiting for them to come to me so that I could forgive them, right? Holding a torch up of all the people we blame and all the things we hate and all the things we don't like. It's ridiculous. It's ineffective. It makes no sense. And it doesn't allow us to get on with the business of the moment, which is life is having a conversation with us. We need to enter the conversation. I spent the next 90 days, literally 90 days, I gave myself 90 days to get to the bottom of everything that had ever happened to me, that I had not understood and therefore not forgiven, that I blamed and therefore not forgiven. The people, the places, the things, all the things, life, God, I threw everybody into it. Everything that ever just scared me, spooked me, pissed me off. I took out these 2 pockets and I emptied them as if my life depended on it. Because it does. We think turning within ourselves and dealing with this thing that St. Francis of Assisi calls our instrument, make me an instrument of your peace, of that frequency peace, make me an instrument of peace, so when there's discord, I choose a higher vibration to vibrate at, I choose a higher frequency to enter the moment with. We don't think that taking care of our instrument is a thing. We don't think it's a thing that we need to do. We do spring cleaning all the time, or at least some of us do, and we get maids or have maids, or we are the maid in our own house, as is often the case, and we find that you clean, and next week you have to clean again. So Roseanne Barr used to say, well, what's the point of cleaning when I clean and then 14 days later I have to just clean again? She just threw in the towel with cleaning. We can't throw in the towel with cleaning out what's going on inside of this instrument that we are. Because this instrument that we are, life is showing us, life is always showing us, guiding us, leading us, evolving us. It says how you meet the moment is the world you're going to create. And if we are in a world that we have created that's out of control, it's because we are. Now, I don't have to fix anybody in the administration. I don't have to fix anybody, in any department or in any other country or in any other family or in any other community. That's not what I have to do at this moment. At this moment, the most effective thing we can do is enter the conversation life is having with us about our evolution. So that we may once again, like all of creation does, turn to the light. So that we may experience a lightness of being that, oh my God, I don't know when's the last time anybody talked about feeling light in this wild and scary, dangerous, hair-raising ride called the world. Every day you get up, something more surreal has happened. We got to come back home to ourselves one by entering a conversation that's already happening. Our body is already having it with us. And so for 90 days I cleaned house. For 90 days I began forgiving. For 90 days I looked at myself and at everything that had happened to me. For 90 days I emptied the pockets of everything that I had been carrying. And a crazy thing happened. And crazy and wonderful, and oh, what is that beautiful thing that just happened by being impacted by a boat that turned out to be the most beautiful thing in the world, because that's when I learned how to really forgive, how to forgive. If you don't know how to forgive, if you don't have that skill set, this whole world is going to bring you bags and bags of things that you're going to not be able to forgive, that you have to drag around with you because everything is wrong with everything. I learned how to forgive. I learned how to forgive in real time. I learned how to, how to forgive in the moment, so I didn't have to carry it into the next moment. This talk isn't about forgiveness. It's not about doing anything. It's not about becoming something else. This talk is simply about entering the conversation that life itself is having with us in the moment, because life is a relationship. Our energetic self and our human self, that's a relationship. Our angelic self and our human self is a relationship. And we are invited into that relationship. And we can begin entering into that relationship right here and right now. And we can put a different story into the boat. The story of evolution that brings all things to their completion. That makes no enemy regardless of what happened in the boat when it impacted you, but it simply is an invitation for us, an invitation for us to handle the great experience that's come in with a greater expression of who we are in the moment. We live in the land of love. We got to find that frequency, and we'll find it in the moment. We speak the language of love. We got to find the frequency, and we'll find it in the moment. And we barter with the currency of love. There's a frequency that's waiting for us, a field of love, a field of flow, a field of presence, a field of right here, right now. And when we enter into it and sit back down, come back home, hold our seat, as Pema Chodron would say, in the moment, we discover that after 30 days the bleeding stopped. After 90 days, there was no tenderness. And after 30 years, we've been in conversation with one another, myself and my 2 fibroids, if they're still there. And we've been at peace with one another. And I've been able to find my treasure. When I and any enemy within me or from without exists together, in me, in my thoughts, in our feelings, there's no room left for our treasure. Come collect your treasure. It's right here, in this moment. And so I'll say, as I always end these talks forever and ever, clearly, enough said.